Okay, now we are live on the YouTube channel. So, Bob, no one can see you, but they can hear you.
All right. Hello?
We've been sitting here for about an hour, like, debating stuff and talking about stuff. So, we've basically done a whole podcast without actually doing a podcast.
That's kind of what happened.
We started debating. We started talking about roller coaster facts. We were talking about the news. Brought up a lot of things, but none of it. It was all uncensored, uncensored, not being recorded. Yeah, I do see that new, whatever it's called. The new POV, yeah. Okie dokie. Yeah, you could probably pull it up on your phone if you go to my channel right now. You could see us live, or see me live, actually, because you're not on there.
Yeah. Then we'll end up with a feedback loop.
Exactly. I like to do that, though, sometimes. See? Yeah, you could probably pull it up on your phone if you go to my channel right now. You can see me live, actually. For some reason, the audio quality is, like, really bad, but... Well, not. It's, like, going really slow, but whatever. See you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile. Okay, you almost ready?
Yeah, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, the audio should be running well. What's that shaking noise? I need to pull this up. So. Okay-do. Okay, so guess we're good to go. Okay, the audio's up. So now I just need to figure out how I'm going to start this. I guess I'll just be like, usually I start off with before I actually, before I start. I usually have like something. I don't just say, welcome, I'm James. I usually start off with like a little bit of like almost like an intro to a book, like starts off talking about something and it kind of just hooks the reader in. I'm trying to think of something like last week I was like, the off season sucks. It's been 2 months or 2 weeks without riding any roller coasters. There's still 3 months to go, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm like, okay, welcome to Coaster Talk. My name's James. I'm trying to think of something like that to do.
This week, the off season still sucks.
The off season is still awful. I've literally started that my last 3 shows, so I feel like if I kept doing that, they're just gonna be like, all this guy does is talk about being depressed in the off season. I don't know. I swear, so unprepared. Okay, I guess I can just start off. Welcome to Coaster Talk. I don't do that much, so. I'll just be like, welcome to Coaster Talk. Here's source. I have a tagline and everything, which you probably don't know about because you don't listen. Okay, here we go. Welcome to Coaster Talk, your source for everything roller coasters. My name is James Barber, and we're here with a special guest, a good friend of mine, Bob. How are you, Bob?
I'm doing all right.
So, Bob, lot to talk about. We've basically spent the past couple hours talking about what we're going to talk about on the podcast. We've basically done a mini podcast before the podcast, probably even longer than the actual podcast will be. We've been on Skype talking.
We probably should have recorded all of that.
Yeah, oh man, now we have another hour. Whatever.
I'm sure you and I can argue about it.
Yeah, we'll fill this podcast up. I'm sure fill it up pretty well. But a lot to talk about this week. A lot of stuff. I know we're gonna debate later. Bob and me have 2 completely opposite sides of a spectrum on a couple of topics actually we're going to talk about later. We're going to have a big break run segment today. Usually it's a little bit of a shorter segment where we just talk about the weekly poll, but this week it's going to be the break run. I guess just a debate. It's going to be a full debate. And we'll get to that later. But first, we're going to start off how we start off every show by talking about some of the industry news in a segment we like to call Attraction News. Yeah, you see, I just stopped there. Okay, so we'll just go. Are you gonna go to this real quick?
What? What?
You just highlighted the link, so are you gonna go to that?
Yeah. I was just. Yeah. That's what I was doing actually.
You wanna? Yeah, you can take a look at it real quick.
How did I miss that post?
I don't know. Looks pretty great though, doesn't it?
It does.
I guess we don't have to talk too much about this, but usually I have about 2 or 3, but this week we have 4 smaller ones, so that'll probably take us just as much time as the bigger 2 or 3 ones. So.
Do you want, while we're talking about it, do you want to just mention the whole backwards train thing? And
yeah, you can have it. You bring that up when I say. So what I do is I'll just kind of leave like a little. I'll just stop talking, but it's not gonna be like I'm just randomly gonna stop talking. Like it'll sound like something like I'm ending a sentence, and then that'll be your turn, your cue. Because I don't want to be like if I have to say every time like, okay, Bob, you talk about it now, then it sounds kind of bad. So I'll just be like, and that's what I think. And then you can be like, yeah, I really do. So if it sounds like I'm definitely ending and letting, even if it doesn't sound like I'm leaving you any space, just you can jump right in and start going.
okay, so like even if I jump in over top of you, you can still deal with that.
Yeah, so if I'm like talking and I'm like, what about blah blah blah, you could be like, yeah, I don't know about that or blah blah blah. I mean, obviously not like if I'm don't be like no or something like that. But like, yeah, if I'm leading you into something that you think and we can just digress, it's just talking in real life kind of thing. But I'm not gonna be like, okay, Bob, what do you think? Okay, yeah, that's what I think. But Bob, I'm not gonna be like that every time. Like, Bob, what do you think? Bob, because then that sounds really bad. I tell that to all my guests, because it doesn't sound good if I have to introduce them every time.
Right.
So yeah, you can talk about. You can be like, yeah, I actually heard that there might be like a backwards part of this train or something. It could be like a DC Rivals hypercoaster because like half of the seats are backwards.
Yeah, that was something that was brought up.
Let's look at. I can send you the link of DC Rivals real quick because this might be what those people are talking about. It does. I don't know if that's exactly what they're talking about. Though. Let's see. Remember, it's like they can go backwards.
They mentioned something. I forget which coaster they actually mentioned.
It can even go backwards. Oh, this is way down at the bottom now.
Yeah, people did bring up DC Rivals on that.
That's probably what they're thinking it's gonna do. I feel like they would show that in the animation, but I don't know. Gosh, there's only one good picture of this going backwards, and it's like, oh, here we go. And it's like and it's on like a thread on Coaster Force. Okay, here we go. There's a better one. Here, I'm sending it to you right now. If I'm allowed to. Why is it not allowing? Skype's not allowing. I don't see the message. That's weird. When I change it to my monitor, there's no message little symbol for me to click, but when I change it to my regular computer, I can click on a message. That's a little weird, but did you get it?
Yep.
So you see they're going at the lift hill backwards there.
Yeah.
So some people are facing forward, some people are facing backwards. Something along those lines, probably. Or is what the people are thinking. I don't know if that's truly happening because I feel like that would be something that would be announced.
Yeah. Sometimes they keep fun, teasers and stuff for later.
I don't know. I guess they haven't really shown us the trains yet. All we've seen is just the front. So
I don't know. I still think it was just a mistake, but
yeah. Well, I don't even know what. Can you send me the link to the actual Reddit post?
yeah, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, let me look at that then.
I think it's. Didn't I? Yeah, it's called "So the Rumor Mill Fires Again."
Oh, okay, there we go. What? That's Carowinds Captured. I follow him. I didn't see that. Um, I don't know. I mean, all they're saying is on Instagram. Some person said that.
Well, the thing was, it was based on the model that was shown at Carowinds.
Yeah, you can just talk about that. I'll let you jump in on that and talk about that.
See here. It was actually sourced from Carowinds' own. There's the link for it. Their own page shows the model backwards.
I can't see the picture that well. I'll pull it up on Instagram, since this is on Instagram. They showed the entire car backwards on this?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's obviously just a mistake then, yeah.
That's what my thoughts are, but people speculate. Why did...
Yeah, that's obviously a mistake. That's dumb. But we can talk about it. See if something along those lines is happening. Okay. Okie dokie. So here we got 3, 2, 1. So Carowinds has now teased us. We don't see the full trains, but we can see part of the front of the train on Copperhead Strike. On the animation of this video, or of the teaser video for Copperhead Striker, the promo video for it, we see the trains, but we didn't really get too close of a good look. I mean, they're like some sort of old black, like almost like a Cadillac type car, and the front of the train that we see on the actual Carowinds, they post about it and everything. It looks really good. I mean, it has like the snake on front of it. It's slick, black. It looks, yeah, it's very slick. I think it looks like a fantastic ride, and now the trains look great as well. So that's really all I know about the trains. I know we haven't been able to see the full train yet. I know the rumor that Bob has actually brought up to me is that the ride might be going backwards.
Yeah, there is a lot of discussion about that on Reddit. I don't know. Personally, it all sourced from a Carowinds post on Instagram that showed a model, and on the model, the train was actually backwards. I think that it was either one, a mistake, or two, they just thought the shot looked better that way, hoping people didn't, decipher. I mean, because GP probably doesn't decipher that, oh my God, that train is going backwards because nobody wrote it yet. But, there's also been tossed around the idea of maybe something like DC Rivals where, back half of the train is backwards, front half is forwards, or one train running backwards. My thoughts are, if they are deciding to do one train backwards, that would just be a logistical nightmare, because then you'd have people waiting in line for the train. All of a sudden, the wrong train comes in, and they're trying to find people to cut in front of them because they want to ride backwards or they want to ride forwards. If they would go with like one or two cars backwards, I would hope they would do something like Intimidator 305's queue, where like the front seat is its own separate queue in a sense. But personally, I think it's just a mistake that has been read into too much. But you never know. Sometimes parks can hold on to teasers a little bit longer so they can tease you with more at the beginning of the season. As for the front of the cars, they're actually they're themed to be Moonshine Runners, which are like an older style car you would see like in the Untouchables or one of those 50s, 60s eras. That's what the theme is actually supposed to be. It does look really sweet from what we can see so far. It should be interesting, and of course, Mox trains tend to look really, really cool. So I'm excited to see more of them.
Yeah, getting on the Untouchables. That's a great movie. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite movies of all time right there. But this is Roller Coaster Podcast. Yes, I think what you're talking about, maybe having like a separate loading station, like two sections of a loading station, like one side, maybe like there's a sign that says front row or front facing car this way,
right?
Backwards facing car this way. Maybe they have a dual loading station. I mean, we haven't really seen the loading station, actual images of it. So maybe there's a dual loading station. Maybe it's just a separate queued off area for one type of car or one type of car. But I really feel like if they were doing this, I feel like what you do is you advertise that, you make people very excited for it. I feel like it's a little less of a big deal when you just all of a sudden, like right when it's about to open, say, oh yeah, it goes backwards. It's like, oh yeah, sorry about that. Like all the people have been watching it for a couple months. In a way, I guess announcing it that big of a deal, that big of a thing later could benefit, but it also could, I feel like, take away. As I feel like I would be building way more. I'm not building that much anticipation for this ride. I think it's gonna be fun. I think it's gonna be great. But if I know for a fact it's going backwards, I am looking so much more forward to it. So I feel like in that sense, maybe announcing it goes backwards earlier would be a better decision. But in a way, I can kind of see like, oh yeah, big announcement, it goes backwards, yay, and like everyone gets excited. But I feel like if personally, and I think a lot of people would be, because in a way this ride doesn't look that impressive to me. I think it's gonna be one of the best of 2019, at least in the United States. I think Steel Curtain and Max Force will top it, but I think it'll probably hold the number 3 spot for me. But it looks like a fun ride. Looks like it could definitely top Intimidator. Like Intimidator Carowinds isn't that great of a ride. Probably not Afterburn. Afterburn's pretty great.
I can definitely see it being. I
50 miles per hour.
I personally like Intimidator, but
I like Intimidator too. It's a fun ride, but I think a Mack multi-launch is definitely going to beat that. My thing is, I don't know if it's going to beat Afterburn. I know some people might put it above Afterburn just because of the theming and because of the uniqueness of the ride. But I think overall as a ride experience, I don't know which one's going to be better.
For me, the bigger point is going to be the launch.
I feel like
I'm definitely a launch coaster fan.
Mm-hmm.
So if that launch feels really good, we were talking earlier about the Storm Runner Top Thrill Dragster launch thing. You can shout all the statistics you want, but what it feels like is what's going to matter. So when I get on it and I feel it, that's going to be the deciding factor of how that launch. That launch it just feels really good. I could see it definitely being my number 2 in that park, with Fury obviously being the number 1 for right now.
Mm-hmm. And what for me is going to determine the actual the launch matters. I think that's definitely going to play a huge important role in the actual ride for me. But I'm wanting this ride to be intense, and I just have a feeling it's going to be very, very not intense. It's not going to be intense. I have a feeling down there, and it's just going to be kind of like, eh. I mean, I've heard Icon at Blackpool's very mediocre intensity. I've even heard Helix is not that intense, and that's like one of the most acclaimed Mack multi-launch coasters out there. And so I'm like, is a 50 mile per hour launch coaster that goes like, I don't even know. I think it's like barely over 100 feet tall, is like the tallest point. Is that going to do it for me? Is that going to be better than Afterburn? Is that going to be the second at the park?
For me, though, the intensity doesn't necessarily mean fun. I definitely like intense rides, but there's plenty of rides that, I've talked about this a lot with friends and stuff. Merlin's Mayhem at Dutch Wonderland is a coaster I love. I enjoy riding that coaster a lot more than I thought. It is not even close to being intense, but it is so much fun that I will ride that ride over and over again and not complain about it.
Well, yeah,
so,
I agree, yeah.
I agree with you that it's not going to be intense. I don't think it's going to be an intense coaster. I am very hopeful that it's going to be a really fun coaster.
I agree with you, but I think the point of having a launch coaster, and especially, Mack Coaster was speculated for this park for at least a year beforehand they even announced it. Everyone was like, this is going to be a huge 60, 70 mile per hour launch. So the big factor for me is I feel like a launch coaster, especially they're not trying to say this is a family coaster. So if they were saying it was a family coaster, I'd be like, okay, maybe it doesn't need to be intense. But they are saying this is a thrill coaster. It's on their website as like an extreme thrill. I believe it's like a 4 or 5 diamond or whatever. So it's pretty high up in their thrill ranking. And for me, that type of launch coaster, and when it is a launch coaster, it needs to be intense. That is the thing about a launch coaster. I feel like is supposed to be intense. Every launch coaster. I mean, Volcano is pretty intense. Top Thrill Dragster is pretty intense. Storm Runner is pretty intense. I mean, it's not an unintense ride. The launch is a little weak, but the ride is not unintense. I mean, it's still an intense ride. King Ka is pretty intense. I feel like when you have a roller coaster that launches, Flight of Fear. That's an okay ride. I mean, the launch isn't that great, but that is it's pretty intense. And I don't feel like this is going to be nearly as intense as even the Flight of Fear models.
I don't know. I wouldn't.
Flight of Fear. What is Flight of Fear? Flight of Fear is around 50 miles per hour too. That's around the same launches we're going to get from Copperhead Strike. In the premier the premier rides I think are much more intense than any of the Mack rides I've been on. And I just heard
See, I don't know. I wouldn't describe Flight of Fear as intense.
I would.
Backlot Sun Coaster is. I wouldn't consider that an intense coaster either.
I would consider that pretty intense at some points. And I'm not saying intense as in like it's insane, but intense as in when you go through some elements, you're like, oh, that's pretty. I don't feel like anything on Copperhead is going to be that intense. Maybe the JoJo roll. Because, you know, obviously that's intense because you're literally hanging and you're going like 2 miles per hour. So that's going to be pretty...
I'm looking forward to that.
That's going to have your blood rushing to your head there.
That
Hydra at Dorney Park isn't that
it's
intense
amazing.
Either, but the JoJo roll is really great on that.
That is one of those things, when I first saw that, I'm like, what the heck is this? And then when you experience it, it's like, I get it.
Yeah,
this makes sense. It's just a lot of fun.
So I feel like that might be intense because even on Hydra, which isn't a really intense ride, the actual JoJo roll is pretty intense though. I feel like that might be intense, but I'm looking for the rest of the ride. Is it going to be intense? And I don't know. I mean, we're kind of going off topic here with the actual trains. I mean, but if it goes backwards, if there's a portion that goes backwards, that might add to the intensity. I mean, that's where I'm trying to get at. If it goes backwards, and I feel like, again, that's going back to my point is, if we'd known this, if we'd known it was going backwards, I might be looking forward to it more. I might be saying, hey, maybe this will beat Steel Curtain. Maybe this will beat Max Force. Going backwards is a pretty big aspect of a ride, especially if I have the choice to ride it backwards or forwards. I can choose whatever I want. I feel like that's definitely going to add to this, to add to the ride. And, you know, I think that is something that they should have announced if it is going backwards. In my opinion, I think they should have announced it. I know some people might go, well, no, it's building up anticipation. Then when they announce it, it'll be a big deal. Still, I think you should have announced it back then. I think that should have been one of your campaign when you're putting on TV promos and you're putting it on Instagram and you're putting it on social media. It goes backwards. It's probably it would be like the first backwards coaster in America. Wouldn't it? It would be the first backwards launching coaster in America.
No, because you have, I'm drawing a blank, Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, I guess that goes backwards for a portion. Yeah, but this would be the first in a while, I guess, and it'd be on the first on the East Coast, definitely.
I still personally, I still think that the whole thing was just an accident, or not really. I don't think the backwards train on the model was meant to be anything.
Yeah,
but if it was, I mean, there is something to be said that, we start getting into springtime, you can renew. You know, if you keep something under your hat, you can renew the excitement by announcing something else. And I think that's kind of what they do with the trains. Like right now, they're really teasing the trains, and I mean, many parks have done that exact same thing. I mean, even Kennywood has kept the Steel Curtain trains, until IAAPA, they kept that. We knew what the ride was. We didn't know what the trains looked like. They kept that, and of course, whenever those trains were shown, it was kind of a renewed, like, oh yeah, Steel Curtain. It's a reminder. Hey, stay hyped about this.
Yeah, but Steel Curtain was announced back in IAAPA's in October. This is like a long time after.
What I'm saying is, it was like the trains weren't announced with Steel Curtain. They announced Steel Curtain, then later they announced the trains. So there's this point of, just renewed enthusiasm by giving another little piece. I think we're going to see the same thing with Hershey Park. I think they're going to be teasing us, over the next year and a half with little tiny bits of information that is going to renew. Because let's face it, they announced that Chocolate World was announced a long time. And if you can drop little hints every so often, you can renew that enthusiasm. Like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's going to be really awesome. And you keep that enthusiasm going by keeping these little things. But again, with Copperhead Strike, I do not buy into the fact that there's going to be anything backwards. I think that was just a mistake, or just, some photographer said, no, you know what, it's going to look better this way. I don't think that has any real bearing on it, but we'll find out.
And again, I agree with what you just said, but I still feel like you could have built the anticipation for the trains at the same time saying it goes backwards. Because they show the trains in the promo video, so we already know what the trains are going to look like, basically. I mean, I could pull up a picture right now, and you can see the black train, you can see with the car in the front, and you can see all that, and you don't see anything backwards. So it's obvious it's not going to be like the DC Rivals, I don't think, or they would have shown that in the promo video. But if they do decide to have a backwards train and they just didn't show that in the actual promo video, that's cool. But I feel like you have to announce it goes backwards in the actual promo video, and then you can still release the trains later on, but at least show.
That's an interesting question. I have no knowledge of this, but when DC Rivals was announced, did they announce that
They
at
did.
first?
They did.
Did
They
they?
said, and they were like, and it's gonna go backwards, and they were like, Duh, and they showed like the backwards riders and everything. So they did show that. So yeah, I think that's
Well, like I said, either way, I'm not buying into it.
yeah.
I don't
I'm not
think
buying into it
anything's.
either.
I personally do not think anything is going backwards, but we'll find out.
So Six Flags Over Texas has a strange little scenario going on over there. Originally, a Larson Loop was supposed to come to their park called Lone Star Revolution. A Larson Loop is still coming to their park, but it is now going to be called El Diablo. That's a little bit weird of a change. I mean, I feel like when you announce something, you stick with the name. And it's a little weird to all of a sudden go, oh yeah, we're just going to call it El Diablo now. But whatever, that's Six Flags for you. They just change it, and it doesn't really matter. No one cares. I mean, it's the
Well,
Larson Loop.
Six Flags is pretty.
It's a Larson Loop.
They like to keep their same names, and they probably said, you know what? Let's just keep these logos. Let's not spend more money on redesigning a new logo for this. Or
Well, they already have
you
the
know-
logo designed, like in the actual release. I don't know what they're
Oh
doing.
well, then
What are
I
they
missed
doing?
that.
I don't know what they're doing.
I don't know. That's Six Flags. They just, I mean, that's one of my biggest gripes about Six Flags is having the same names for different rides in every single park.
Yeah,
It just,
and I would be
irritates-
still upset with this, but all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we're changing the name of a ride that we've already announced, we've already talked about, it's already up on the website. We're just going to completely change it to El Diablo. I mean, it's a little strange, but the big question that's posed here now is the old El Diablo from Six Flags Great Adventure, is that statue that we saw outside, that demon statue, is it going to be moved down to Six Flags Over Texas? That's what a lot of enthusiasts are curious about, because that statue is like the only good thing about that ride. The ride I rode, I actually was there during a ACE event called Riding of the Bull last year, and we were there and we got last ride of the night on El Diablo. And so they just kept running it and running it and running it and running it for us because we're enthusiasts and we told them. So we were going I think we were going for a point at 3 minutes, just going, keep going. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting nauseous. I was like, okay, we got to, I'm like, right up, we got to stop this. I'm going to throw up. If you want me to throw up all over and you have to clean up at nighttime, right when you're about to leave, be my guest, but you got to stop this thing. So the ride was it was okay. I mean, I don't mind, but after going on for about 3 or 4 minutes in a row without them stopping it, it got a little nauseating. But is that statue going to be moved to Six Flags Over Texas? That's a big question that a lot of enthusiasts have in the industry.
Here's the scenario I think probably played out. They were probably getting El Diablo, the actual El Diablo in New Jersey, ready to go up to La Ronde. Mm-hmm. And Great Adventure goes, hey, what are we going to do with this statue? And Six Flags Over Texas goes, hey, wait, we want it. Right here. We're good. We'll just call it El Diablo. Because, I mean, you can't have that statue sitting out front of Lone Star Revolution. It just doesn't fit.
Well, why don't
so that's a scenario that
why don't they rename Chaos then and just keep the one at La Ronde, just keep it the same? You literally wouldn't have to paint the new one because now that one's going, it's going to be called Chaos. So why wouldn't they just keep El Diablo at La Ronde, put it La Ronde, and then they wouldn't have to paint it? They would just move the statue
actually
as well.
The reason why the Great Adventure one is moving is this is my understanding.
Because of an accident.
The ride operators do not like the joystick controls on it. The new version that they're getting is actually fully automated. They hit a button and go. The ride operators at Great Adventure they just weren't able to get a hold of the joystick control because you have to get into the rhythm of that, and I guess it was an issue for them. That's my understanding of why that ride is moving.
My understanding is there was actually an accident there a couple years ago, and Six Flags got sued over it. And now they're just like, yeah, we're going to move this somewhere else. That's what I've read on. I don't know. I mean, it's probably both. It's probably like both at the same time.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we might as well just move this. But the thing is now, what they're doing, I think it might be smart. They're just going to move it somewhere else. It's going to be completely repainted, renew. So now, the general public aren't going to be like scared. Like, oh, there was an accident on this. Oh, they got sued. They did get sued. They had a lawsuit. And I believe Six Flags won. I mean, the people that sued Six Flags won. It was like a kid and her seatbelt came off and she held on, but like the seatbelt came off, so they sued Six Flags. So I'm sure it's a mixture of a bunch of things, and they're like, you know what, it's just better to move it and rename it and retheme it, and so I guess they're just gonna. And I believe the one going to Six Flags Over Texas is gonna be a larger unit, a larger model. I don't know about that though for sure, but I'm almost sure about that.
I don't know. I can't keep all the Larson Loops straight. There's way too many.
They're not
of
roller
them.
coasters, so it doesn't matter.
No,
but
they're
going
not.
on to Six Flags Great America, we finally got a look at the point of view video for Max Force. So this is a roller coaster that I'm highly anticipating for 2019 because I will be riding it, and it's a ride that I think is going to be probably, if not the best, then the second best, right behind Steel Curtain for 2019's best in the United States. And we finally get a look at it. And a lot of people online are dissing this ride, and I'm like, these are the same people that love West Coast Racers and think West Coast Racers are amazing. And I'm like, you're dissing this ride, but then you praise a kiddie coaster that has some inversions on it. I mean, come on. I don't know what's going on with West Coast Racer hype. It looks average, looks fun, but it A, doesn't fit at Six Flags and Magic Mountain whatsoever. We've talked about this on the podcast, but doesn't fit at Six Flags Magic Mountain whatsoever. It's literally like any other park in the world. It would make sense. And add a little bonus here. Six Flags lied in the promo video. They said it's the world's first quadruple launch roller coaster, and it's not. So I don't know where they're going there. There's one in Abu Dhabi, and it's at Ferrari World where Formula Rossa is, and it's literally a quadruple launch coaster. And I'm like, are they blind? Did they not do their research, or are they just trying to make up stats here? And I guess the general public don't really care. I don't know what's going on there. But they lied.
I think that's the thing. Like, you can say whatever
lied.
you want. The GP isn't going to catch it. I mean, technically, Cedar Point still advertises that Still Vengeance is the longest hybrid coaster, and actually the Ultimate is.
Yeah.
But like the majority of people aren't going to catch that. It doesn't matter. It's a marketing hype, and marketing isn't necessarily.
What if they
about,
said like North America's or even the or Eastern Hemispheres?
Yeah.
I mean, Western Hemisphere. If they just said that would have been, yeah, that's true. But I mean, either they're not doing their research or they just blatantly don't. They just don't care. They're just like, whatever. No one's gonna catch it. Other than I guess the Coaster Boys, which we have catched it. I've caught it. A couple people have caught it.
Yeah, but again, do we really care? No.
No.
We ride a ride because it's fun. Sometimes I think some enthusiasts get way too wrapped up in the statistics of things. I mean, that stuff's fun. It's definitely a lot of fun. But sometimes, like, I don't like when you actually take away from the excitement of a ride. But marketing doesn't equal truth necessarily. It should, but it doesn't. But
Especially from
to
Six
Max
Flags.
Force. I think the thing with Max Force is it's a short ride. But you have to look at what has happened with pneumatic launch coasters. There's one remaining, Dodonpa. I think that was the only one left, right? There were only two built, Hypersonic XLC and Dodonpa, and XLC got torn down before I got to ride it. I would love to get to ride Dodonpa, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. SNS is in a new era, and in a sense, they're kind of they're not reinventing the pneumatic launch coaster, but they're in some sense they're starting from scratch. And I think that if you look at like some of the extreme prototypes, I mean, look at Intamin's accelerator coaster, Stormrunner Accelerator, Top Thrill Dragster, Kingda. They're all short, quick rides because you're pushing technology to a limit you haven't gone yet. And I think that's kind of what's happening with Max Force. I think that they're just keeping it short because the shorter it is, the less there is to go wrong with it. You're gonna get their feet wet. I think if things work well, I think we'll start seeing longer ones built. But SNS is definitely in a new era because I remember the day that Kennywood announced Steel Curtain. I was flabbergasted that they picked SNS to build the ride. I was just completely devastated. But that was I'm going to go back to Merlin's Mayhem. After I rode Merlin's Mayhem, I learned that SNS definitely I know I'm talking about a family coaster, but if you ride Merlin's Mayhem, it is just unbelievable how smooth, how comfortable, how enjoyable that ride is. And that was my first experience of like the new SNS. And that really started opening my eyes. Like, whoa, they've done this. Now, granted, Steel Curtain is much, much taller, much larger. But I mean, the level of engineering in that was just spectacular, and I think that we're seeing a revolution in SNS. I think they're actually coming around to a higher quality. They're actually caring more about it. And then the more I like Max Force and Steel Curtain, just as time goes on, I get more and more excited for them. Who was the designer? I think Joe. I can't remember his name from Ride Centerline. He designed both of Steel Curtain and Max Force, and that that just adds more to it. And one of my biggest fears has always been like when coasters advertise with the most inversions or this statistic or that statistics, I get worried because I'm afraid that a designer is going to be just checking off like, well, we got to do this, and they're not really having the freedom. But the interview that I saw, basically, they really took the freedom anyway and fit the statistics in around the fun. And I just can't. I'm so excited for Max Force and Steel Curtain. So much more than I ever thought I would be.
Yes, I agree. Max Force definitely looks like a top 25. I think steel coaster, maybe even the world. I know people are going to go, oh, no way. But I think a short ride doesn't actually determine it's a bad ride, or it's not as extreme, or not as fun, or not as great. And I definitely think Steel Curtain has the possibility of being up there as well. I think Max Force has the potential of being the best coaster in the park. I know people are going to go Goliath, pull the Goliath card. Goliath is definitely, they're definitely going to be close. It's definitely, I don't think it's going to be like a blow out of the water by Max Force, and I don't think it'll be blow. I think it's going to be similar to Twisted Timbers and I-305. Some people say Twisted Timbers, some people say I-305. It's going to be something like that with Goliath and Max Force. But Max Force definitely looks like a fantastic ride. But a big thing, and this is finally for some of our overseas listeners, European listeners, Heidi Park. They are reopening their old Colossus roller coaster, and it's going to be called Colossus Fight the Giant. So this is a Merlin park, as we know, and basically this is going to be a Wicker Man 2.0, but on a larger scale, because obviously this is an Intamin prefab. It's a much larger coaster, but the new logo looks almost identical to Wicker Man's logo. It has the fire, it has that glow, orange glow around the text. It is basically the same logo, and it has very similar wooden structure of some sort of creature that the ride's going to go through. So this ride is just, it's like a larger scale of Wicker Man, and it's probably going to be better. I have not ridden, obviously, Colossus yet, and I have not ridden Wicker Man. I don't know either of them, how great they are or anything like that. I've heard Wicker Man's pretty great. I've heard it's pretty fun. So this on a larger scale, on an Intamin prefab, and I know they've been doing a lot of track work and a lot of work on this ride. This could easily be one of the better wooden coasters now in Europe. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. When I go in 2020 to Europe, I'm really looking forward to riding that.
Yeah, I really don't have a lot of thoughts on this one. I've not been to any overseas parks, so I have a hard time making any kind of judgments on certain things. The one thing that came to mind though is it's kind of interesting how Intamin has been kind of morphing themselves recently. We saw those two the two POVs released at IAAPA that basically shows Intamin coasters with a very, very heavy RMC twist to them. And I kind of wonder if this is kind of a basis more on decorations and theming. But, could they also, whenever it sounds like they're doing a lot more than just fixing the ride. It sounds like they might be doing a lot of new maneuvers and stuff like that. And I wonder if, the prefab side says, hey, GCI is really doing well. What can we do differently that they're doing well? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how, our RMC's definitely changed a lot. People companies are kind of looking to other companies and saying, hey, they're doing that really well. And, it's going to be interesting to see what the result actually is.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if Intamin's fair to say copying, but they are definitely
I didn't mean
inspiration.
Really
Inspiration. Yeah. Some. I haven't seen exactly what they're doing on Colossus, on actual changing the layout. I'm sure they have changed a little bit because I had to like literally rip the track apart. I know when Taylor from Coaster Studios and Coaster Kids and Coaster Bot and all them went to on their European extravaganza, they said that the Colossus was closed and they were doing a lot of track work and they took footage of that. So I remember seeing that. So I don't know if exactly what they changed on the actual ride, but I do know there are some themes. There are some like theming elements during the ride, like that huge statue. There's a new logo. But the real question, a lot of people are asking this, is the ride going to utilize any smoke or fire effects as we saw in Wicker Man? I'm not 100% sure on this one. I think it'd be really awesome. I think it'd definitely add some effects on this ride. It would make it a much better ride. I've heard Wicker Man is just phenomenal, especially at night with those effects on. So are we going to see something like that on this ride? I don't know. I mean, it says Colossus fights the giant. There's obviously this giant creature. Is that going to be lit up on fire like Wicker Man? I mean, Wicker Man is actually kind of themed to like catching that kind of thing on fire. Maybe not fire, maybe there'll just be smoke, but there should be some sort of, I think, visual effect going on there to play.
I think that's something interesting we've seen in the recent years. Theming is becoming a higher priority, it seems, in a lot of rides, and it's something that I think is much needed. Theming can add so much to a ride, and I think maybe parks are finally starting to realize that. It's not saying that coasters without themes are bad. There's definitely a lot out there that are great. They don't need themes. They just stand well on their own. But you can certainly, increase the thrill just by the theme. I think my number one coaster right now is Mystic Timbers, and like if you took the theming away from that, it just definitely still has the possibility of being my number one, but it still just adds to it. That's so much a part of that ride.
It definitely does, yeah.
And I think that may be another thing we're seeing right here is that they're going, hey, we have to do all this work on this coaster anyway, and if we add some theming to it, it's definitely going to make this a better ride. So that might also just be what we're seeing is parks starting to realize theming can be very important.
Theming matters. Yeah, theming does matter on a lot of rides. Some rides, like you said, can stand alone without any theme. But I know people, I just want to specify, because I know a lot of people are going to hear the number one is Mystic Timbers. And go, oh my God, he's probably ridden like 2 coasters then. But no, Bob has ridden a lot of roller coasters, and that is seriously his fate. Like, he's ridden Steel Vengeance, he's ridden Skyrush, Intimidator 305, so Fury. He's ridden a lot of roller coasters. So you're like 185 coaster count?
Yeah, 184 is where I'm at right
184. Now. 184. That's like 30 away from where I am. So he's ridden a lot of roller coasters. Mystic Timbers still stands out to him. That's great. I love Mystic Timbers too. I believe that's my number like 11. So yeah, Bob, I mean, he's ridden a lot. So I just wanted to add that in there because I know some people, if you say like Mystic Timbers or something like that, some people will be like, oh, he's probably just ridden like 10 coasters and now Bob is up there.
Nope, I have actually rode quite a few, and I just love Mystic Timbers.
Does stand out. It definitely does. For a while there, I had Twisted Timbers, Mystic Timbers above Twisted Timbers, but then I'm like, I don't know. I have Twisted Timbers above now, but
Twisted Timbers, one of my most controversial things for most people is I actually like Twisted Timbers far more than I like Steel Vengeance. Yeah. I know it's a rare opinion, and sometimes I wonder how much there's the self-affirming bias that's in effect with Steel Vengeance, but that's a whole different topic we can get into at another time. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I love the feel of Mystic Timbers is just impressive. I really like Invader as well.
The theme again,
but yes, that theme just adds to it. The shed, I could take or leave the shed, but there is something about climbing that lift hill, the way that as you're walking through, you get that the line, you get that sense of what's going on, and
that
then
truck outside playing like old promo videos of Kings Island and stuff.
Yeah, and just like whenever you're climbing that lift hill, the way that it stops, and you hear security yelling at you, like I don't know, that just adds something to the ride. And then you just go flying through the woods, and in some sense, it takes Beast, makes it smaller, and adds airtime because you're still flying through the woods, and it's just a great feel. Like that immersion in the woods there.
Yes, and I think that's what they're attempting to do with Colossus. That's what they're definitely trying to do with Colossus: is add some sort of theme, add some sort of other aspect that it's not just a ride; it's almost just an experience.
Right.
So yeah, Colossus at Heidi Park, as we said, is being renamed Colossus Fight the Giant, which is a little weird of a name. I'm not saying it in German because in German it's like Kauf der Gantingen. I'm like, I'm not going to say that, so let me put that in translate real quick and see what that is. It's Colossus Fight the Giant. So I don't know if that's translated correctly. It might be like fighting the giant or Colossus is fighting. I don't know exactly what it translates exactly, but I just kind of threw it and translate it real quick. So it's Colossus Fights the Giant as of what I know. It's a new logo. Merlin looks to be trying to do a bit of a Cedar Fair thing here. Cedar Fair is some reason liking this theme, like Mystic Timbers. We got like a very mystical, old-timey theme. With Twisted Timbers, we got this mystical, old-timey theme. Steel Vengeance, old-timey theme. They're not all in the same sense of like, Wicker Man is just like all themed to like a weird creature in the middle of the ride. But all of the rides that you see, 2018, Mystic Timbers, it had the shed. It was really like old-fashioned. Something had been overrun. Twisted Timbers, it was a farm that had been overrun. And Steel Vengeance, it was more of a, old western town had been overrun and taken over by by Maverick. And then these guys are coming to fight Maverick. And then Knott's Berry Farm's Hang Time it was an older theme. But for some reason, Cedar Fair likes to be going back on like the old-fashioned themes. Like everything's old-fashioned now. If you really look at 2018, you examine it, all of it's been old-fashioned. So it seems like Merlin's pulling it and saying, hey, Wicker Man do really good for us. Why don't we use that theme at another park and see how it works there as well? So Heidi Park is Germany's third most visited park. So I don't know how great that statistic is. That's what they say on their website. They're like, we're the third most visited in the country of Germany. I'm like, I don't know if that's too great of a stat, but okay. But yeah, I mean, that is something that's going on in Heidi Park. It looks like it could definitely add to this awesome roller coaster. I think it already looked awesome in the first place. Now it looks even better. So now we're going to go on to Coaster Craze, the segment where we talk about something big in the industry, something that usually we just throw together real quickly, and that's what we're doing here next. Ooh, take a little break there. Ooh. Yeah, so I guess we'll just talk about Schwarzkopf now. Oh, an arrow. Yep.
I could see this topic going off on rabbit trails.
One sec. Hello? Oh, hello. I got home at I've been home all day. I didn't have school today.
What?
It was a teacher work day. I'm doing a podcast with someone though.
Oh, oops.
You can come in if you want. Or we just took a break. You're lucky. Just my friend. He's over here.
Oh, hello.
Well,
Alright, I'm gonna go take a shit.
Okay, be quiet. Please try to be quiet.
Where are the dogs?
They're out in the office, so be quiet. Because that's I don't want them barking at me. Sorry, that's my cousin. I don't know why I guess she's working, so. Ooh la la la. It scared the crap out of me. Someone's knocking on the door and I hear it. It's like, hello? I'm like, oh my god, who's here? Someone just came in my house. Oh. Yeah, everyone on the live stream, that was my cousin there. It's an added bonus feature. Just to see my life. Okay, let's get back to business. I'm lucky. Literally, I'm glad we took a break right there.
yeah, that worked out really well.
Right when she comes in. Okay. Let's start the break run. I mean that Coaster Craze, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. No one cares. 3. Arrow and Schwarzkopf are two of the oldest manufacturers in the business. Both of them are defunct now, but they both still have roller coasters that are available to ride in countless parks all over the world. And they're both considered two of the biggest and most impactful manufacturers of all time. With the Arrow, you have the first ever looping or tubular seal coaster. And then with Schwarzkopf, they've done a lot of innovation. I believe they had the first. They really helped inspire the new vertical loop that came around because they made it more of an oval shape, and they were the ones to figure that out. So they've done a lot, both of them, big players in the industry. And so really, when it comes down to it, which one do me and Bob like better? That's what we're basically talking about here. That's what the big topic is right now. So personally, Schwarzkopf is my go-to. I love Schwarzkopf. I do love Arrow too, but personally, Schwarzkopf takes the cake. I'm a really big fan of their rides. I've only ridden, I believe, 2 or 3 Schwarzkopfs. I've ridden a lot of Arrows. And I feel like Arrow varies in how good their rides are. Arrow can have Anaconda and be an awful ride, or they can have Tennessee Tornado and be an amazing ride. So in the Schwarzkopf, all the rides I've ridden by them are amazing. They are all great. They are all smooth. They are all intense. So for me, I think Schwarzkopf definitely takes the cake. We'll talk a little bit more, but Bob, I don't know. For me, it's definitely Schwarzkopf.
Yeah, this is a very interesting subject to me. First of all, you mentioned of like the non-circular loops. Schwarzkopf, most of their still is pretty circular. That's kind of the interesting thing about it is Arrow kind of came along with this like stretched out loop that they said this is so much more comfortable. I definitely like. There's definitely a different feeling going through it. As for my favorite, I mean, these two are really. It's so weird. They're very very similar, but yet they're also completely different, and it's hard to say which one actually is better than the other. Definitely, I think that Schwarzkopf's rides have held up better. They are definitely Super Duper Looper at Hershey Park still amazes me at how smooth that ride is. It's like it's one of the smoothest coasters that you can ride today, and it was built in the 70s. That's just not. I don't care who the manufacturer is. It always seems like you get some degradation, and with Schwarzkopf, I don't know. You don't seem to have that. They just, I guess Anton just engineered things really well. And my thoughts with Arrow, I really like Arrow. Of course, you can't discount what they've done for the industry, not even just roller coasters, but the amusement industry in general. But the one thing about Arrow is they were very innovative. But at the time that they were innovative, they also didn't have the technology that manufacturers today have. So I think one of the things that happened with Arrow, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because I'm very much, even roller coasters that I don't like and I won't ride again, I think they have a place and they should remain standing as long as they possibly can. To me, if you're an enthusiast, you're a coaster enthusiast. You should really be enthusiastic about any coaster. And that's where I am with Arrow. Some of the Arrow rides are uncomfortable for me to ride, but that doesn't mean that they're not great rides. But one of the things I think happened with Arrow is they developed the loop, and it took them so long to engineer that loop because they were doing it by hand. They were actually drawing. All of the engineering was actually done with pencil and paper. So when they designed a loop, they kept that same loop, no matter how fast you were going or no matter where it was on the ride. That loop was the same dimensions. Their elements were exactly the same. So as you increased the speed, they didn't really increase the size. And I think that's one of the aspects that made them a little more uncomfortable. But here's the big thing that I would love to see is what would happen with Arrow's rides if you actually took a train from another manufacturer. Because here's the thing. This is one of the biggest things I think is the difference between Schwarzkopf and Arrow. Schwarzkopf had lap bars. They did not have horse collars. And I think that is one of the biggest difference that you have between Arrow and Schwarzkopf is you don't have that horse collar locking your shoulders and having your neck take a lot of the impact.
And the Arrow trains are very, very compact as well. Like they're very tight. Like getting in a Loch Ness Monster, your arm, on the left side of your body, the train will literally be like you can't have your arm. You have no arm room, you really don't have any leg room either. But the big thing with Schwarzkopf for me is, again, I think when they innovated that circular loop and made it, they were the first not to have a non-circular loop. And so I think that was a huge innovation because all of a sudden, since I believe it was like the early 1900s, they were building circular loops. And then all of a sudden Schwarzkopf's like, wait, it would actually put less stress on the track and on a human's body to do a non-circular loop and make it more of an oval shape. So that I think that's really awesome they did that as well.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I thought that it was actually Arrow that did that.
No, it was New Revolution. Six Flags Magic Mountain was the first to ever open.
I know Arrow did the corkscrew. That was their
after.
Innovation. But it's interesting because I mean, obviously the old school Vekoma fits into Arrow with how they stole the Arrow technology. Yeah. And I mean, early Vekomas I think were probably, they definitely had some fun elements, but they were probably the most painful rides I ever rode. This past year, I took my niece and nephew to Hershey Park. My niece was tall enough to ride Sidewinder.
That's a great ride.
And, well, yeah, I know that now. At the time, I was like, all right, she wants to ride it, I'll ride it. I hated boomerangs. Boomerangs were one of my least favorite rides.
SLCs are much worse. I find most boomerangs that I've ridden are good.
That's right there too. But here's the thing: I was not aware that Hershey had got new trains for Sidewinder.
Yeah.
When I rode that ride
with the vest restraints,
that ride, like I love boomerangs now. They are fun. I actually enjoyed it. I'm still not a big fan of going backwards through the loop. I just don't. I'm not a big fan of that feeling. But I mean, it's something I can deal with, and the rest of the ride is still fun. I actually enjoyed it. I rode it. It was literally going to be one of those. Okay, Piper, I'm going to ride with you one time, and then I'll walk through with you again if you want to ride it again. But I'm just going to walk through. Like I'm not going to ride it again with you. But I actually did. We both rode it 4 times in a row, and I loved it. I mean, those vest restraints make a huge difference. So I wonder if you did the same on Arrow, what would happen? I think that I think Arrow right now for the majority of enthusiasts that didn't grow up with Arrow and they weren't around in the heyday of Arrow, I think they don't really get it. You just hear like, oh, they're so rough. They should replace them with B&Ms or something like that. And I hate hearing that any roller coaster should be torn down. But the thing is like, I wonder if you were able to replace those trains with some type of vest restraint, like if Vekoma could manufacture a train for Arrow's rides, or SNS, since SNS actually owns Arrow, the assets of Arrow. If somebody could manufacture a vest restraint train for Arrow's rides, I wonder if we'd still hear, oh, this is, it's a painful ride. It's, I don't know. I think all of the rides are a lot of fun. You mentioned Anaconda. I think Anaconda is a lot of fun as well. It's uncomfortable for me, but it's fun. It was definitely an innovative ride at the time, and I mean that's what roller coasters were back then.
They're bad.
No. No, that was the technology, and they're not.
I mean, Tennessee Tornado. I know that's like 10 years after that opened, but still, I mean, that's a kick butt ride. Loch Ness Monster opened around the same time as Anaconda. Actually, I believe it opened before Anaconda, and that's a kick butt ride. But why is it that Anaconda sucks?
The interesting thing is, and I may be wrong on this, but Tennessee Tornado, that's the one at Dollywood, right?
Yeah, Alan Schilke designed that.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. I think, didn't Alan Schilke also have a hand in Loch Ness Monster?
No. Loch Ness Monster opened in like 75. That was way before he was a part of Arrow.
Was it?
Yeah, because Tennessee Tornado opened in like 83 or 84. So that's a ride that opened way, way, way after Loch Ness Monster. Loch Ness Monster was opened before Anaconda. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Schwarzkopf takes the cake for me. Because every Schwarzkopf I've been on, I loved, and I can't say that for Arrow. I can say Arrow has some rides that I definitely enjoy, but in all honesty, I'm just not a big fan of Arrow. In general, with a lot of their rides, some rides I do love, and I don't think, like you said, I don't think any should be torn down. I'm not saying tear down all the Arrows. I'll ride them, and I will respect the history that they have, and I will respect the innovation that they've produced in the industry. But if it's not a good ride, I'm going to ride it once, and then I'm probably not going to ride it again.
Yeah, Although I've caught myself on that. I'm never going to ride this again, and then I get off and then go, yeah,
Well,
you know what?
yeah, I've done that too
I'm
because
gonna
I
ride
do
it again.
Anaconda every season. I'm like, I'm never gonna ride Anaconda again, and I always end up riding it at least 5 or 6 times that season. Like I only rode it last season like 5 or 6 times, but I do.
So, yeah, I did look it up. Loch Ness Monster was actually designed by Ron Toomer.
Yep.
But this is interesting. I wasn't aware of this. It was built by S&S.
I did not know that as well.
That's interesting.
So I guess it was designed by Aero, and then
Yeah,
S&S just
it was an
kind of
Aero
assembled
ride,
it.
but it was built by S&S.
Yeah, they just kind of assembled it. But
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think that has anything to do with the actual how the ride turned out, though.
And actually, the trains that are currently on it are actually S&S trains.
Yeah, they're new. They just got new trains a couple years
Yeah.
ago.
I think,
Or
wasn't it
last year,
for the
actually.
40th
40th
anniversary?
anniversary, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
New
Aero,
trains.
you've done a lot for the industry. I respect the heck out of you, but I think Schwarzkopf takes the cake for me. I mean, they've been just as innovative. They've been around just as long. So
And I also find it really, I mean, like I said, I took my niece and nephew to Hershey Park this year, and my nephew had just hit 42 inches. And if you ever wanted to see an excited 4-year-old to ride, to be able to go upside down, I thought he was going to fall down the steps waiting in line. He was just so excited. But like that says something too. Like there's, you know, a 4-year-old can ride Super Duper Looper and enjoy it, and an adult can ride Super Duper Looper and enjoy it. That's you know, we don't see that with a lot of family coasters built today. You know, a lot of family coasters you'll have that's too intense for a 4-year-old, or you have to be 48 inches, or the adult's just bored. And that's something that Schwarzkopf. I mean, there's something about his rides. They're just fun. They're fun for everybody.
So, I mean, Mindbender at Six Flags Over Georgia is an intense ride, and it's a great ride. It's in my top 35, I believe. So, yeah, Schwarzkopf. I don't think any of the Aero rides are in my top 35. Tennessee Tornado might break the 40s, but Schwarzkopf's rides are just, I just believe, a little bit better. Probably a lot better overall as a collection. I mean, you think they have Olympia looping, they have Mindbender at Galaxyland, they have Mindbender at Six Flags Over Georgia. They have a lot of great rides.
One thing I do have to say though, Aero hit. I really like Magnum. It's still in my top 20.
No, I don't like Magnum, so that's where we disagree. Then I guess that's where.
See, so here's something that we definitely differ on, because I remember going to Cedar Point as a kid, and this was before the Causeway was even built. We were driving along the beach road, Cedar Point Drive, and all you could see was this towering red monster, and that was literally all you could see. Like the spectacle of that, like it will be ingrained in my mind for all time. At this point, you cannot even see Magnum from the front of the park. But you know, just experiencing like the like, oh my God, it literally took, as a kid, I was afraid of coasters, and it took my dad 2 years to convince me to ride Magnum. And here's a testament to, this is just an interesting side trail. You know, you hear about operations and things. This is how quick operations were back then. My first ride on Magnum, I was, I believe, 10 or 11. I had finally been talked into it. I was scared to death. I got in and we were dispatched in no time at all, and my seatbelt wasn't on. The lap bar was down, but my seatbelt wasn't on, and I was scared to death because I could not get my seatbelt on. And like, yeah, if an 11-year-old can have a heart attack, that's probably the closest you ever came to it. But you know, it was such a different time with roller coasters than what we have today. It was just an amazing experience. The Magnum was just incredible.
And I think if you've grown up with a Schwarzkopf, though, you might think Schwarzkopf is better. Like if you grew up going to Six Flags Over Georgia and you had Mindbender there, you'd be going, "Oh, yeah, I remember going." And so I think when nostalgia comes into play.
No. So here's the thing, though. My actual first inversion, the first inversion was that I ever rode was actually a Schwarzkopf. That was the laser loop at Kennywood, and I loved that ride. I was scared of it too. The only reason why I actually rode it when I did was because that was the last year of its operation. It was being torn down for the brand new Steel Phantom coming next year. So it was like, hey, this is the last chance. I better ride it. So I rode it, and of course I loved it, and then next year it was gone. But I loved it. It was an amazing ride. I absolutely loved that ride. But Schwarzkopf never built something on the scale of the upper end of what Arrow did with rides like Magnum.
I don't know about that. Olympia Looping is huge.
Yeah, but
I believe
what I mean
180
is,
feet, 5 inversions.
yeah, it definitely was a bigger coaster, but it wasn't on the scale of what Arrow did with Magnum.
I don't know about that. I don't know if it's on the scale in the sense of it wasn't as big of a deal because
It wasn't as high.
It wasn't in the
They never
United
put-
States either. It wasn't at Cedar
So
Point.
I do wonder what if Schwarzkopf would have built Magnum.
Or what if they had built a coaster like Olympia Looping at Cedar Point? I think it would have gotten more attention then, and then it might have been a bigger deal. It really just depends on what park the roller coaster is going to, because at this point, Cedar Point kind of, and some of the bigger parks, they control the roller coaster attention. So when it's the first 200-foot coaster, obviously it's going to get a lot of attention.
Yeah,
And
and the first 300 foot and the first 400 foot.
well, they didn't have the first 400 foot was Superman at what's it called at Magic Mountain. That opened in like 1996.
That's the blast coaster.
Yeah.
The first full circuit 400
Yeah,
foot.
first full circuit.
That's what it
400
was.
foot. That's what it was. Yeah, but whatever. It doesn't matter. If it goes to Cedar Point and they had that record, obviously. But if they had built Olympia Looping and it was like, hey, it's the first. I think back then Olympia Looping was the first with like 5 inversions. So if they had that record, first 5 inversions, it's 180 something feet tall, goes 60 something miles per hour. I mean, then you have a ride there that could have been a big deal. So it really just depends. I think Schwarzkopf is a better manufacturer. You might do you think Arrow? Or I mean, you haven't really said fully what you support yet.
In the class of ride that Schwarzkopf built, I definitely think Schwarzkopf probably takes the cake.
Yeah, I agree. Schwarzkopf was just, I don't know, it's just that their rides have really stood the test of time better, definitely. And I think even back then, riding them both, like if you had an Arrow next to each other and a Schwarzkopf next to each other, and you went and rode the Schwarzkopf and then you got off and went to ride the Arrow, I feel like the Schwarzkopf would still be the better ride.
Yeah,
Most of the time.
I definitely feel that way. But I still I really do still wonder if you had the same Arrow and Schwarzkopf standing together, if you put lap bars only on the Arrow, what would the difference be?
Yeah, well, that's, maybe someday that'll happen. Maybe someday,
Yeah.
maybe someday you'll get your wish.
I hope so.
Well, that's about it for Coaster Craze. I know we've talked a lot about that. Schwarzkopf or Arrow, we'll be talking about that again later. But now it's time to go on into the break run. Whew. Oh, boy. Yeah, this is much long. Yeah, usually my show's around 30 minutes to an hour. We're already at an hour and we haven't even got to the last couple
Are we?
segments.
It doesn't even feel that long.
Yeah, I know it doesn't. It doesn't. But that's because we're talking about coasters. If we're talking about something boring, it would feel.
Yeah.
Boring. So now we'll talk about the big debate. So I don't know how. I guess I'll just start this and I'll just say, coaster that's relocated to a new park is not a new credit. That's the end of the podcast. Thank you guys. That's it. There we go. Okay, that's all, folks. I guess I'll start. I don't know. I'll just say I'll leave the poll results till the end. Like, I'll talk about that later. I don't want to start off with that because then it feels like you're on an unfair because you already kind of lost that at that point because you didn't lose, but the people might be like, oh yeah, if more people are saying that, maybe they might give you a bigger chance because this is not really about changing each other's minds. I don't think either of us are going to change each other's minds, but I think it's more about seeing what the audience thinks. So maybe at this point, saying this, they might be like, oh yeah, maybe it is, whatever. And then maybe later I can be like, did people that listen to the podcast, I can say, did hearing Bob explain his point or explain the point of saying it is a new credit, did that change your mind at all, or did that make you understand the opposition better or anything like that? Okay, so I guess I'll just start off reading the question, and then we'll just go on from there. We'll just do a natural flow here. It doesn't need to be like a debate, like actual stage debate, like okay, here we have a question. Support that with evidence or anything like that. We'll just have some fun with it.
Works for me.
Is a roller coaster that is relocated to another park a new roller coaster credit? Does that count as a new roller coaster credit? That is the big question this week. That is a question that I asked in a weekly poll this week. And Bob is here to defend the yes category, and I'm here to defend the no category. So we've both, basically Bob and me started this all back at Kings Dominion this winter. We were talking, and I don't know how this came up, but I think we were talking about Dominator being relocated from Geauga Lake. And I was like, yeah, but it's not a new credit. And he's like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, no, it's not. And he's like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, no, it's not. And you're just like, no. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have this on my podcast. And now eventually we're getting to it now. And so now we can broadcast it to the world. Let the world hear our sides. Let the world hear the both sides of the story here. So in my opinion, I obviously said no. Logically, in my opinion, it's the same roller coaster. It's being moved to another park. Does not make it a new roller coaster. It's still the same roller coaster. Nothing really changes other than the theming and the color scheme. Most of the time, there are some cases when they do change something things, and even changing an element or two does not make it a new roller coaster in my opinion. Like if they changed, we're gonna add an inversion here or something like that, doesn't really classify it as a new roller coaster for me. Logically, I feel like it is not a new roller coaster no matter what. The only way it's a new roller coaster is if they retract the entire thing. I mean, if they retract the majority of the ride, maybe a new credit for me. I might consider that a new credit. But when they're retracting just like certain portions, taking off the track and putting a new track on, even then I'm like, it's still majority of the same roller coaster. So when they move it to a new park, majority of the time it is the same roller. They're not changing anything about it other than the name and the theme, usually. Even sometimes they keep the same name. If it's in the same chain or something, they might keep the same theme and the same name. So I don't feel like, especially if it's the same ride elements, it's the same exact pieces of ride that you rode over. Like, let's just say Geauga Lake and take Dominator. That's the easiest example. When it's in Geauga Lake in Ohio, and then they move it to Virginia, it's the same ride. It's a different state, but it's the same ride it's the exact same ride. Like, it's literally the exact same pieces of steel that you rode on when you're riding it in Ohio. So how does that classify as a new roller coaster? I guess that's where Bob can come in and try to explain that to me, because that's where I'm a little lost.
Okay, so this is the first let me explain that I definitely have the belief that coaster credits are up to each individual. Everybody's going to have their own opinion, and as long as you're not doing something drastically stupid,
which I think this is.
No.
That's what I think this is.
Counting like super or Larson loops or something like that. Like, as long as you're not doing something that's like way off the base, I think it's I think everybody should respect everybody's decision as long as it's not something that's affecting like numbers in the hundreds or something like that.
I respect it, but I just don't agree with.
I'm well aware you don't agree with me.
The logic behind it.
So here's my basis of how I count things and what constitutes as a credit. First of all, I want to say that coaster credits to me are accomplishments, and I think that if it's a gauge of how willing you are to go out of your way to ride something. And this is one of the biggest reasons why I feel like a coaster in two different locations actually can count as two, because you've traveled to another location, you've made an attempt. And so from a pure fairness level, I think that's where I think that's the justification there. But my main thing is I base it on what the intent of the manufacturer, the purchaser, or the builder was. So if whenever B&M designed and when Batman Night Flight was built at Geauga Lake, the intent was this is a Geauga Lake coaster. This is not a coaster that's going to move somewhere. And then you deviate from what the manufacturer intended and you move it to another location, then that's actually is a different credit, because it's a different experience. It's a different surrounding. And I understand the argument of, if you change some tiny little thing, it can change the experience. Yes, I get that. But there's a more substantial there's a more substantial effort put into this being moved and put in another location. And it's also, theming change. Well, I guess the theme really didn't change on that because it was Batman Night Flight and it became Dominator at Geauga Lake before being moved to King's Dominion. But this is, this goes back to the same thing with the floorless conversions. Whenever a stand-up roller coaster is built, whenever B&M built Mantis, Cedar Point bought Mantis. The intent is this is a stand-up roller coaster. Whenever you come in and you do a conversion of a sit-down, that's not the intent. That was not B&M's original intent.
But that's not the point of a credit. The credit is
original intent. Therefore, it is a different ride.
So
it's a completely different experience. And here's the thing: it's not just changing trains; it's changing the position of the rider. So if something happened to the trains that were on Mantis and they put different stand-up trains on Mantis, no, that does not count as a new credit. That's still the original intent of B&M, and you're keeping true to the same coaster.
Position of riders, then. Position of riders. So Rebel Yell used to go backwards. It goes forwards now. Is that a new credit? It's position backwards and forwards.
Okay.
Two different positions.
So this is where we're going to get into the other argument. I think probably the majority of enthusiasts count coasters like Rebel or Racer 75. They count those as two credits. I don't. I only count that as one.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. But what about the position of riders, though? Backwards, forwards?
So here's the thing, though. It's not really. It's essentially it's the same train. It's just backwards.
But no, they brought in new trains, though. They were new trains, and they went forwards. Essentially, the floorless trains are the same thing as the stand-up trains. They're just...
But here's the thing, though. When it was built with one train backwards, one train forwards. The original intent... But the whole original intent is this is one roller coaster.
Rebel Yell did not originally go backwards. In 75, when it opened, it was forwards. Both sides were forwards. So the original intent was changed to go backwards. Because it was changed in 2004, I believe, is when they changed it back to forwards. Or actually, yeah, around that time period, they changed it back to going forwards.
I actually don't know. I can't comment on that. I thought that it opened, but I never actually really thought about that.
Yeah. Is that a new credit, though? Answer that. Would you consider
No, because it's the same.
How is sitting and standing and going backwards and forwards? I feel like that's a very similar comparison. So if you're sitting, then you're going backwards. But if you're standing, you're going forward. So it's the different positions. And even in a floorless coaster, a lot of times I'm sitting down. They have those little bicycle seats. Sometimes I'm sitting down. So technically, I know they're stand-up coasters, but a lot of times I see people sitting on them because they have that little bicycle seat, and a lot of times people just sit on them. So I don't feel like it's that huge of a difference. I really don't. So I don't feel like that's... And I feel like saying it's a new experience... A new experience doesn't really classify it as a new roller coaster because it's still the same ride. It's still the same track. It's just the trains have changed. So that's where we're not trying to really, me and Bob aren't really here trying to change each other's minds. We're here just kind of trying to convince the audience. It's almost a debate, like a presidential debate. We know when the presidents or the two candidates debate, they're not going to change each other's minds, but they're going to try to change the audience's minds. So that's really what we're trying to do here. So in my opinion, the experience does not classify it as a new ride.
See, if you're saying that, though, then why all of the Batman the rides? Why do they count as different credits?
Because they are literally two different type of rides. They are two different rides. They are not the same track. They are different pieces of track that do the same thing. But so Joker's Jinx and Flight of Fear. Let's just say those are two clones. One's outdoor, one's indoor. If they were literally the same ride and they just took off the building in Flight of Fear and called it Joker's Jinx, that would not be a new credit because it's literally the same piece of track. But Joker's Jinx and Flight of Fear at King's Dominion and Six Flags America are two different credits because they're literally two different pieces of track. They are literally two different rides. They're not a new experience. They're literally two different rides, physically two different rides.
What about Gale Force? If you rode Gale Force in its opening year and then in its second year, is that two credits?
I would not consider that two credits. Well, they did retract it fully. They retracted
fully. It's a completely different track.
Yes, so I guess yes, I would consider that, I would consider that a new credit because it's new pieces of track. It's literally a different ride. So yeah, I would consider.
What about retracking?
Retracking like Hurler with the RMC. I mean, yes, that's a new credit. Obviously, that's a new credit.
But
when they GCI,
what about just standard like maintenance with retracking.
No, because when they retrack like Racer 75 and stuff, they don't retrack the full ride. They just retract sections of the ride.
But what if they did?
I would say that new credit, like Gold Striker at California's Great America.
See, no, I don't buy that. I don't think
actually Ghost Rider. Sorry, Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. I don't know.
Ghost Rider. Yeah, I don't consider that a new ride.
If they fully retrack it, it's now a GCI coaster. So it's now not even made by the same manufacturer. So how can you not count that as two different credits?
It's the
It's
same
now when you look
design.
up on RCDB and it banks and does different things than the original intent. So the intent has changed.
Oh,
Bob.
does?
It's a new
Has it?
GCI. It's classified on RCDB as a GCI coaster.
I never rode Ghost Rider, so
Yeah, you wouldn't count it as two credits, but if let's just say in a situation if you were someone that had ridden it in the past and then you ride it again, I would consider it another credit.
Okay, so some sections were reprofiled.
Yes. And like changed completely, like to bank different ways and stuff. And it's now it's classified on RCDB as a GCI roller coaster, so
No, it's CCI.
they don't count it as a GCI?
Nope. Make is still Custom Coasters International.
Maybe the original.
And then it says built by GCI.
Yeah, it's built by GCI, so that's the new manufacturer. So the original ride is a CCI, but the new
No, because what does Phantom's Revenge say?
Phantom's Revenge is definitely a Morgan. 'Cause there are some sections of Aero
No, so Phantom's Revenge actually says aerodynamics.
built by Aerodynamics.
Yeah. No, it says make aerodynamics.
Yeah, so I
And
think they're
Builder's
saying
more-
the original was made by Custom Coasters. The original was made by Aero, but the majority of the ride has been reprofiled by Morgan, and then the original has been reprofiled in this case of Ghost Rider by GCI. So I count that as that's a new ride. If they have to say in there that's built by something, not just reprofiled, not just changed a little bit, but actually reprofiled, and the majority of the track has been taken off and replaced, I consider that a new coaster because the majority of the ride is different than the original. And it's not,
I can't speak an opinion on Ghost Rider. I've not rode it before or after, and I don't really know enough. I'm not going to make assumptions on it.
but some people say that might happen to Grizzly at King's Dominion. Some people are saying that there might be a GCI in the like 5-10 years. If that happened, what would you say?
I would probably not count that as a new credit.
Yeah. You see, you're like opposite. Like, I feel like, and this is not throwing shade at you, but I feel like that is actually logic there. Like, it's a new coaster. It's majority of a new roller coaster.
Let me throw something
From a
else
logical
interesting
standpoint.
at you. So, one of the things that if you ask nearly any enthusiast, is Demon Drop a credit?
No.
They will tell you no, but they will not be able to tell you why they say no.
It's not a full circuit roller coaster.
Neither is Wicked Twister or Possessed.
And I don't count them.
You don't count those as coasters?
Well, actually, yeah, that's a lie, I do. But Demon Drop is a drop. It's not even a roller coaster.
See, and that's the thing. The difference is,
It's not
and this is the
classified
thing,
as a roller coaster.
but most enthusiasts go by this logic without actually thinking about it. Whenever Intamin built that, they were building a drop tower. Their intent was to build a drop tower. That is why it's not a coaster. If they said it was a coaster, it would be a coaster.
Well, Larson Loops are said to be coasters. They call
No.
it coasters. Six Flags literally says they're looping. If you go on that POV I sent you,
And
of
Cedar
of
Point
Lone
says
Star-
that Pipe Scream is a coaster. It's not. It's a
exactly.
disco.
So if they
It's flat.
say it is, therefore it's a coaster. Is that what you're saying?
No,
So if Demon Drop said there was a coaster,
but that
I don't think that would have changed a lot of people's
The
minds.
manufacturer's intent was not a roller coaster. Their manufacturer's intent is a flat ride.
neither is they. What I mean, either Larson Loops. They're
No,
intended
see,
to be
I don't even
roller
think-
coasters. They're intended to be roller coasters, but they're
No.
not considered roller coasters.
No, I don't know.
You see,
Yeah,
it's just this big loop
I can't
here.
speak to what their intent is. I really don't know. I never really
If a
thought
park
about
is
what did
marketing
Larson
it as a
actually
roller
think
coaster.
about.
The park is marketing as a roller coaster. The manufacturer calls it a roller coaster. I feel like that's probably the intent of what they want it to be, or what they want to call it at least.
I don't. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, what a park takes it as. The Skywarps have a little more leeway. I kind of like what RCDB has done and put them in the powered coaster category. I think that's probably more fitting since it technically does coast, even though it's hard for me to say that. It does technically coast. I don't know. I don't count those. I don't think I'd count those. I've never been on one, but I don't think I'd count those.
I would count those.
Yeah, see, I just don't think they're a coaster. I mean, even with powered coasters in general, that's not a roll. That's not the spirit of a roll. A powered coaster is not the spirit of a roller coaster.
Yes, but like you said, it coasts. I don't count all power coasters. If the ride is powered the entire ride, then obviously I don't consider it a coaster. But if the Skywarp has parts of the ride where it actually coasts and it's actually not using any powered motor, then I consider it a roller coaster.
See, with that logic, if you took the exact logic you're explaining right now, there is absolutely no reason for you not to count the Demon Drop.
Like you said, the intent was a drop tower.
But see, so there you go. Your whole intent with Demon Drop is exactly what my whole entire argument is.
And the intent was not a drop tower, and it's also, like I said, it doesn't use trains on a roller coaster. It doesn't use roller coaster trains. It does not do anything at a roller coaster. All it does is drop, and that's
think about it. That's
the ride. And I've ridden Demon Drop. I don't count it as a credit.
I don't either. But like what I'm saying is your logic of why you don't count it as a credit is my entire logic for all coasters.
Well, maybe I don't. You saying it's the intent? It's not a good word.
Right,
it's a drop tower.
Intamin's intent when they built it was they were building a drop tower. They were not building a roller coaster.
But when the intent but if they had changed something on Demon Drop, like let's say they changed the trains and made it roller coaster trains, I mean that doesn't make it a roller coaster because all of a sudden the experience and the intent has changed.
Think about it. We have roller coaster trains that are positioned. What about the first B&M Flyer?
If they changed that to a somehow made that like a stand-up coaster. Or, I mean, like a sit-down coaster. I don't know how that would be possible, but somehow.
What about those?
Is that a credit for you?
Okay, huh?
If somehow, some miraculous way, they found a way to change the B&M Flyers, which I don't know why they do this, but change it to a floorless coaster, that's a new credit then, in your logic.
Yeah, that would be a new credit.
Exactly. I don't. It's the same ride still.
Here's I can't think of the name of it. That Italian manufacturer that made those the suspended coasters, like the family ride or kiddie rides. It was Scooby-Doo Ghoster Coaster, Kings Island.
Those are in PTC, though.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. It's, hold on.
Yeah, but the logic, I don't know if I agree with.
Kings Island. Hold on, I'm going to find this.
Yeah, so we did do a poll, though. And we asked the audience, is a coaster that is relocated to a new park a new credit? 28 voters said yes. So 33% of you guys said yes. 58 voters, 67% of you guys who are smart said no. And yes, so the majority of the audience believes that it's not a credit, but I mean, 28 voters, that's a pretty big amount. I mean, 28 people said it is. So I stand corrected when saying that not anyone thinks like that. Some people do, but I did do an examination, and this isn't really showing off, but I looked at the people that said yes, and a majority of them are the people that have lower coaster counts and might just be trying to count as many coasters as possible. And I'm not saying that that's bad or that's wrong or you don't have a high coaster credit. I'm not trying to rag on anybody like that, but that shows that you might be just trying to show that you.
I do want to say something. Before somebody tries to say that that's my intent, if that was truly my intent, why would I not count the racing coasters twice? So,
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying it's you, but I'm saying a majority.
No, I know. I'm just saying before any listeners go, oh, that's what he's trying to do. No, because if I really wanted to pad my numbers, I would start counting the racing coasters because that would be an easy thing.
That we'll get off there now.
Now,
because
one thing I do want to say.
We have the results from the last week's poll. We're not going to do a poll on is a racing coaster 2 credits because I think a majority of people, and I'm not saying Bob's wrong here, but the majority of people do think that. I think like most people do because they technically are 2 different coasters.
And I will agree with you, but the interesting thing is this is the one point where the coaster enthusiast community actually goes opposite of what parks market, which I find interesting. because parks don't count them as two, as far as I'm aware.
They don't market them as two, but physically in logic, they are two separate roller coasters.
I completely understand.
Operated by
That,
two different
I completely
ride
understand
operators.
that point of view.
Yeah.
I completely understand it, and I completely understand why people count it twice, and I don't fault anybody for counting it twice. I just find it interesting that usually you have the arguments, enthusiasts versus what parks say, and like that's the one thing that's kind of opposite of most scenarios between enthusiasts and parks. I find it interesting that most enthusiasts count them twice, but yet the parks don't count them twice.
I don't know. I mean, enthusiasts go against the parks a lot.
No, I agree. I just feel it's opposite. It's the opposite of the way they usually do.
So you're saying usually parks call it like more roller coasters than they'll say no. Like
right.
But in this case, the enthusiasts are saying yes, it is two credits, and they don't
right.
market
Parks
it. Okay.
usually are the ones padding their numbers, like Cedar Point calling. Like in Cedar Point's case, they want the higher numbers, so they call Pipe Scream a coaster, but they don't call Gemini two coasters. It's just kind of interesting. I'm not faulting anybody for it. And I do want to mention real quick, the coaster I was thinking of is called Scooby's Ghoster Coaster. It was at Kings Island until 2005. It was built by Carapro.
Okay.
It was a black bat flyer model. And the reason why I brought that up is the cars, I mean, they're obviously very different than Demon Drop, but it's same single car, very unique trains that, you could look and go, wait, that's not a typical roller coaster
Okay, so
train.
a valid point someone brought up to me. Someone that agreed with me that a coaster that has two different, like if they change the trains on it, it's not a new coaster. Someone that agreed with me on that and said that they're not. But actually, Bob technically won that poll because I believe we got like 53 or 4% that said yes, a floorless coaster that's converted into a stand-up. I mean, a stand-up coaster that's converted into a floorless is a new credit. I believe, I know a majority did, but I don't remember exactly. It was like 56 or 7 people said yes, and then 43% said no. So it was closer than this poll we have here, but the guy said, so if a coaster has a stand-up train and a floorless train on it, is it 2 credits? Because it's 2 different trains. It's 2 different experiences.
Well, first of all, I don't think that.
But then again, that's okay. Well, let's just say, and the original intent was just to have floorless, but then they changed it to have a floorless and a stand-up. So the original intent's being changed, but it still has the other.
As long as you rode the new train, I would say that would count as a new credit.
Yeah, I see.
But in realistic fashion, that couldn't function because the stations wouldn't be able to handle both trains unless you had two different.
In a world.
But yeah,
else.
in a hypothetical, yeah, I mean that's against the intent of the original manufacturer or purchaser. Now that's the other thing.
Wait,
this is also why. Hold on. This is also why I don't count fare credits twice, because the intent of those rides are portable rides and they move. So you don't count that in different locations because that was the intent. Now, with Wildcat that used to be at Cedar Point, yes, it's a portable ride, but when Cedar Point purchased it, it was meant to be a permanent ride. Therefore, if that was to move to another permanent location, the intent of the buyer and the company putting it together was this is going to be a permanent installation, and then it moves. That's a different credit. But I want to stress that I do not count fare credits. That is not like if you ride a roller coaster that moves from fair to fair every few weeks, every month or whatever, and then you ride it somewhere else, it doesn't, because the original intent is this is a coaster that moves.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to say that it's literally the same ride, and you're saying more of the intent. So I guess that's really where you have to draw the line. So anyone listening to this, me and Bob, we're not here trying to change each other's minds because we've argued about this many times, many different places.
Many times.
Yeah, many times. Over the internet, in real life.
Yep.
But the really where you have to draw the line is what I'm getting at, and this is what I'm hearing from Bob, is if you believe the intent of the manufacturer is what can classifies as a new credit, then yes, when they change the trains and stuff, and when they move it to different parks, it is a new credit. But logically, and logically in the sense of the logic I'm using, I guess, and I feel like more scientifically, I don't know, not scientifically, but just realistic. And this isn't, again, you can count it however you want. It is literally the same ride when you move it to another park or when you change the trains. It's still the same ride. So if you think that the track that the ride is traveling on is the same ride, but then you also are saying that like changing something about it a little bit makes it a new credit, that's where you have to draw the line there. Because if you think the intent is what makes it a new credit, or if the actual track that it travels on, and if it's the same ride, it makes it a new credit. That's where you have to draw the line. That's really what me and Bob are. At least,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just for everyone that said no and yes, if that's how they feel. Maybe some people have different logical reasons why they think yes, it is a new credit when it gets moved, or when the new trains come on. Maybe some other people have different reasons than what Bob's saying, but I definitely think Bob's point, I mean, it isn't wrong. It might not sound right to some people. In my opinion, it doesn't sound right to me, but it is an opinion, and everyone has a right to that, and respect it. I respect it. And I mean, maybe it changed people's minds out there, because I know we have listeners that could have changed their minds one way or another. And so the weekly poll for next week is what we were talking about earlier, and I said we'd bring that back up. Is Schwarzkopf better than Arrow, or is Arrow better than Schwarzkopf? What do you think? I know we've already talked about that, so we don't really need to talk too much about that. Like me and Bob both think Schwarzkopf. But yeah, that's the show. I think that might be one of the longest shows we've had thus far. Usually it's around right around an hour. I think we're running hour and 20 minutes here. That was a lot of fun, Bob.
It was. I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun to debate. It was fun to talk about some coasters. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can check us out on Twitter at @CoasterTalk_pod, Facebook at CoasterTalkPod, Instagram at CoasterTalkPod. Thank you for listening to your source for everything roller coasters. My name has been James Bauer. We've been here with Bob as well.
Hello. Thank you for listening.
And we'll see you guys later. Hello?
Yeah. You can edit that as appropriate. You kind of caught me off guard.
We can just do another goodbye. I'll just say, you said.
Hello. Thank you for listening. Yeah.
Hello?
What should I say?
You could just say thanks for having me on or something.
All right.
Okay.
Just-
3, 2, 1.
Thanks for having me on.
Cool.
That work?
That works, yeah. Okie dokie.
So you're not going to East Coaster, are you?
No, sadly. I might. I was planning on maybe going to Coaster, Winter, whatever, Cedar Point. Yeah, but that's sold out, so.
Yeah.
I was going to go, and I'm like, oh, never mind. It's sold out. Everything
Yeah,
at
it's
Cedar Point
sold-
sells out. It's annoying.
It was actually funny. The 8 a.m. slot stayed there were tickets available for 3 weeks after, but all of the other time slots sold out within a day. So nobody wanted to go at 8 a.m. though.
Where are you going? When are you going?
Noon, I think. I'm going to East Coaster this weekend, and then
Is Pam going to that?
what's that? No,
No.
she was thinking about it, but then decided. I don't think she likes doing the non-riding events.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it does suck to go to parks and not be able to ride. So
Yeah, but I don't know.
you're
Some of
close to
the
Hershey, though,
best.
so it's not too. You're not too bad from Hershey, right? You're only an hour and a half, probably 2 hours.
It's 2 hours, yeah.
That's not too bad. Yeah, that's not. But for her, it's 4, and for me, it's 3.5. So
Yeah.
So,
So,
it's not really worth it.
The thing that was really fun last year was the Knoebels tour on the Sunday after. I loved that tour, but I don't know what they're doing this Sunday, but I can't stick around for it because I got to be in the data center for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you said that. I mean, you could have gone to Dollywood, Bob. I'm still mad about that.
I know. Seriously, I would have done it if I would have known, if I could have planned for it a little bit. I do want to get there though. Hopefully this year. I don't know. I said that about this last year though too. So I don't know. I got to get up to Great Adventure again too.
Okay, I'm gonna end the live stream real quick.
All right.
See you guys.